James Ole Kiyapi. And before we get into that, as always, let's set the stage.
I refuse, and I have completely resisted the temptation to believe that in order for Kenya to develop, it has to be managed and it has to be led by a small group of leaders, even when we can see their failings. And I have said and challenged Kenyans that if we all just believe in ourselves, and if we all just brought on the table the things we know, we have all that it takes for us to move to the next level.
Many of us are here in that Macedonian call and you are refusing. Some of you are being called as doctors to go and help in very needy places. Some of us are being called to stand up for county reps, and you are saying, no, I can't go, mimi si siasa ni chafu. Nani alifanya siasa chafu? Inakuwaje ni chafu na ni siasa ndio inaamua ni nani atakuwa wapi? Kama tutapata chakula ama hatupati.
I want those who think we have no coalition to know that we are the coalition of 42 million Kenyans. There is no competition if Kenyans were to be fair and honest to themselves. And I want you not to confuse yourself on matters that are black and white. They are very clear. This is a very clear ticket, very simple but very clear.
So the countdown continues. We meet them, we listen, we decide. I promise this will go on. And of course, we will be having what we're calling the great debate for the governors, the potential governors for the city. This is being organized courtesy of a coordination between KTN and Strathmore College. And we shall be at the university live, and we'll give you the definitive date tomorrow. But tonight, let's meet Professor James Ole Kiyapi. Professor, pleasure to have you back.
Thank you.
I know you've been out there speaking to Kenyans as far as wide as you can go.
Yes.
And I've been watching, and I'm just thinking back, and I'm wondering, we grow up, we have dreams. We're at the age where all of us want to be a pilot or a doctor, then we want to be a teacher, and then we want to be more definitive things. But for you, when did this come to you? 10 years ago, 20 years ago? When did James decide, when I grow up, I want to be president?
Well, Louis, to be honest with you, I never dreamed when I was a little kid that I would be, or I would want to ask Kenyans to make me president, because I didn't even know how you take those steps. I think if there was a dream, it was a dream, how can I go to school? Because where I was, it was very hard to go to school. And that's why I was late. I started when I was already 11 years old. So for me, it has always been strive to go to the next step. So you strive to get out of a very difficult situation to start school. And then when you are in school, you strive to move from primary to secondary. And you are never sure that you will finish that stage. And when you finish that stage, you strive to go to the next. And I'm sure it is the same even today. There are very many young people, so many young children who are just taking that path. But when you become aware of what is going on around you, when you begin to engage and you begin to share and you begin to see the country and you begin to meet people, then you begin to ask questions. For me, when I started teaching as a lecturer at Moi, and I was teaching forestry, and I had a chance to take my students around Kenya, and I saw this incredibly beautiful country in terms of natural resources, in terms of, whether it is forests or wildlife or even different cultures, landscapes. Everybody tells us Kenya is a very beautiful country. Then I asked myself, are we getting the full potential of what this country can give us? Are we getting the full benefit of this great country called Kenya? And so as I asked those questions, at one point I wanted to run for member of parliament in 2006. And I actually went to my constituency in Kilgoris and I campaigned for 1 year because I genuinely believed that I wanted to go and really help to engage in the leadership question.
So you wanted to start mobilizing at a local level?
I did for 1 year. And just before the election year in 2007, His Excellency the President appointed me permanent secretary. And when that happened, I was prevailed upon by the people that, look, you have already been given a leadership position. It is a national position, and we now know you. You cannot turn down an offer by the president. So I went on and I became a PS. And I served.
Yes.
And again, I want you to just understand my background a little bit.
Yeah, that's why I don't want you to become the bureaucrat first.
Yes.
I want to understand before you became the bureaucrat. Did you have any political affiliations or any political attractions? Did you have people who you have a shared political history with before you actually could then decide, I will either go into elective politics, or then, good for you, you got an appointment at a bureaucratic position?
Now, first of all, I was growing up during independence era, because I think when we got independence, I was about 2 years old. And even though I was very, very young, I still remember when we were receiving badges of the national flag. They were very beautiful, shining things. And because you didn't get those things in rural areas, so you go to Sunday school and they give you a badge. So we knew something had happened, but we didn't really know what it was.
Right.
So I have been very keenly watching the political process in Kenya. In the 1960s, I wasn't much aware of it. In the 1970s, I was, partly in high school. But in the 80s, I was a university student. And that was the time when we were talking about the liberation, movement, the struggle for multi-party democracy and all that. And that's why I'm a little bit annoyed with the people who told us that they wanted to go into politics to bring another way of doing politics. They said having KANU as one government and one party and one government, was not good enough.
So you trusted those people at that time?
I trusted them because I was a young person. I said yes, and I used to obviously read everything at the time of Akinam, the Ford, Forum for Restoration of Democracy.
They captured your aspirations.
It was the inspiration of the moment for everybody who was growing up in my time. Like now it comes. I mean, this is it. Freedom has come. Unfortunately, even before we went into the first multi-party elections of 1992, the guys had already divided into I don't know how many parties, and it quickly degenerated into another very selfish game. And since then, it has just been a game of musical chairs. Come and we join, we win, and then promise Kenyans something exciting. And look at 2002. In my place, every child who was looking after goats, who was looking after cows in the rural areas, they didn't quite understand what they were saying. But
Where was this exactly?
They were saying, rainbow, Kilgoris, Transmara, rainbow, rainbow. You know what? It wasn't that they hated Moi or Moi's government. It was that they were told there's something better has arrived. So there is a sense in which we have let down the people of Kenya. Those of us who have gone out to promise, because when you promise, people believe you because you are a leader. But when you go into power and you don't live honestly to that promise, then there is a sense in which you kill a dream. Even for younger people or youth or people who would like to do it even better than yourself.
Those you saw, those you admired and let you down, and they continued on that path. They went on into elective politics.
Yes.
And now some of them have developed a sense of entitlement. Some of them feel, but James was not with us. Yes. He ran away from the trenches. He decided to go and hide behind books, behind another path. James didn't stay on for the fight. So why should he claim a portion when it comes to now leadership with the new victories and tangible milestones, especially with a new constitution, new opportunities? How do you feel to this argument?
I would say three things. Number one, I was fighting from another front. Let us desist from thinking that you fight for Kenya because you're in politics. The doctor who is treating the patients in hospital is fighting for us. The teacher who stands in front of kindergarten children or primary or secondary is fighting for the nation. The nurse who protects children in incubators is a soldier for the nation. I was fighting because I was a teacher. I was contributing. In fact, I felt at that point that, if these guys can give us a good political environment,
sort of then
perhaps we all don't have to go into politics. Some of us can excel in academics, some of us can excel in industry, some of us can excel in agriculture. We all don't have to go into politics. The second point I want to raise is that I can no longer identify those guys. I cannot identify the reformers, the guys who promised me that when they would go in there, the guys who told the nation that Moi must go. I cannot identify them anymore. Thirdly, this issue of entitlement. That's where Kenya got it all wrong. That's where our leadership got it all wrong. It is not about the leader. It is not about what I will get as Kiyapi. It's about the people. Leadership is about the people, empowerment of the citizens. Earlier on, before we came on, I was telling you, masses of Kenya, many citizens today are at a very, very vulnerable stage. That's why when you go to elections, people are manipulated. Why? Because if you disempower people, then they become impoverished of ideas, impoverished of, in economic terms. So people are not able to have human dignity, to stand for themselves. So, and when they reach that point, you go around and you can manipulate them. Never mind that you give them 50 shillings, 200 shillings, 100 shillings. So election time is time for the citizens to reap. But what is there to reap? It's a false, it's a lie, it's a big lie. So for me, I feel that there has to be a better motivation.
Take a look at this. Forgive the spelling, I realize there was a mistake there.
Kiyapi, yeah.
Now that you've entered elective politics.
Yes.
Don't worry, they'll see it. My editors will put it up there. I want them to see. I want you to have a look at what they're putting up there. The question being, just who is James Ole Kiyapi?
Yeah.
And they're looking at it now. They can see exactly what I've shown you now. Because now you've chosen the path of going to the people, going for elective politics. You've said, all right, enough of sorting this out from the desk. Let me go to elective politics. So tell me, are you still at the stage where you're struggling to introduce yourself?
No. I think that I have introduced myself because I have served. I have worked for over 20 years. And in all that time, I gave public service. There was no moment that I did something for James, like, doing my own private work. I was serving. So I introduced myself in some way as a lecturer in the university. I introduced myself in the last 5 years as a public servant, a public official, serving in very critical ministries of this country, environment, which takes care of really key our food and everything. Ministry of Medical Services, where I saw a lot of suffering of our people in hospitals when they go and there are no medicines, and in education, trying to help our children. So I have introduced myself, but I feel that I'm not sometimes understood.
Right.
Because when I come on stage, people look at me like it's just another politician. It's just another guy who wants us to elect him so that he can go and enjoy himself. But Louis, I'm not in this because the job that President Kibaki gave me was bad, or it was not enough. In fact, if the job of permanent secretary was not enough, even if I would become president, that job would still not be enough. It was not about the job was not good enough, I want a bigger one.
What was it?
It was that.
When did it really bite you? When did it get you when
in
you said
2000,
enough of being in this position?
December 2007, when after the post-election violence, when the elections erupted after the president was sworn in, and you know what followed, and the rest is history. That is when I became restless. And I have never been peaceful and calm about Kenya until this moment. I have been a restless person. I have agonized every moment about our country. Why? Because we have divided Kenya. We have polarized this country. We have said us and they. And yet this nation is calling on every single citizen to stand up on their 2 feet and say, here I am. The nation is calling all of us to duty so that we become the citizen that Kenya really needs, so that we can get into the real business of construction. I was listening to the president today, and he was making an interesting joke about, you know, some of you are anxious of me getting retiring, you know, and he told us he has not forgotten that he's retiring. But he made a more powerful, more profound point. He said, it is not about who is retiring and who is getting in. It's about the agenda of this nation. Mm-hmm. It's about where we are, who we are as a people, and what really our dreams are, and the same dreams for our children.
James.
So for me,
yes,
I started talking to my colleagues. I talked to permanent secretaries. I talked to CEOs of parastatals. I talked to the private sector guys. I talked to you know, people like you, Louise, and even the masses, young people, everybody, to tell them, listen, let us never go back again to where we have come from. Let us never sit back and then expect 5 guys, because politics is starting, to fix for us the problems facing Kenya. If you, Louis Otieno, know what you can do to help, come out and help. So James, for me, that's what made
that brings me to one of the arguments we're having now, in terms of citizenship, proper citizenship, responsible citizenship. And we, of course, developed a culture of pointing fingers at everyone. It is always the next person's fault. It was fashionable to point fingers at the leaders. But you know that we are classified in this country. And there's a very interesting class called the middle class. And now the contestation is, have they done enough to help change this country? Have they done enough to say, we now have people who, when they come together as leaders and lock themselves behind those doors in a cabinet meeting, in a setup like that, we can trust them to come up with proper policy. Do you feel the input of the middle class in this?
No. Let me tell you, Kenya is one of the countries that has one of the most developed human capital in Africa, if not in the world, on a percentage basis. If you look at the number of educated Kenya, I mean, we shine everywhere, everywhere. Go to American universities, you find Kenyans there. You go to Europe, wherever, Kenyans are there. Even in business, we are everywhere. We are aggressive, good people. Unfortunately, either we are selfish or we suffer from a disease of me and myself and I and my family, so that you, Louis, you have a nice home in Karen or wherever it is, and you and your wife and children, you take care of your little place. Never mind that your neighbors are suffering. The middle class, I say, is a letdown because they have not taken the education they have received from society and given back in commensurate terms value for that education. It is like we have gone to school for ourselves, but the value of education was never for you and yourself and your wife and children. The real value of education is for you and society, that you give back to others. You give back to the poor. You give back to those who didn't go to school. You will now lift them, not necessarily because you're going to pay for their fees, but you will bring an empowerment. If, for example, all the educated middle class who are in this city of Nairobi and elsewhere went back to their village primary schools and went back to their village marketplace and went and did something there and said, I want to be the patron of this primary school, and I'm going to bring my friends. I want this school to shine. I want the school to have classrooms. I want the school to have desks. You think it wouldn't happen? To some extent, it is happening,
James,
but not at the level that it should.
Yes, James, but then, so which voter are we looking at? The middle class has abdicated, as you say it.
Yes.
The next target is the youth. But the argument is, are they sufficiently informed, sufficiently exposed, sufficiently involved? Because a lot of people, and it became a form of a speech. When you have a speech as a leader, you must always say, I'm going to look out for the youth. But are you going to tap into these numbers? If the middle class isn't there, they're not going to pull their weight. Is the youth attracted to your message?
First of all, I don't want us to use young people as a tool for our own political agendas, because it is wrong. It's unfair. Young people people are an investment of this nation. They are actually the future of the nation. They are the strength of the nation. If you want to see how strong the country is, just look at how strong the young people are. Now, in my opinion, the young people are at different levels. There are some who are at the level where we are or even above us. There are some who are talking much bigger stuff than even is being talked by university professors. Let me tell you what a young girl in high school said to the parents, and we all shed tears. A young girl called Shamin in Form 2, I think, Pangani Girls, and I went there for Education Day when I was a PS, stood up and she was giving a poem. And she was saying, Kenya is one country, it's one people, one language, yes, different tribes, but we are one. And then she went on to pose a question, said, and if we are not one, if we are not one nation, then show us the boundaries. And I saw parents removing handkerchiefs, wiping tears, because children were engaging in a conversation higher than even the parents. Look at our universities today. Since this whole business of the new constitution came into being, we promulgated the constitution in 2010, up to today. Where is the university? Where are the professors? Why are they not helping us to interpret these complex issues in a very simple way so that citizens understand that, you know, this is where we are going? They are silent because they are also now become hostage. They have become held hostage by politicians, and basically they are pandering to political whims of the same political class. So young people, some of them really are looking for hope. They're looking for something they can hang on. Others are confused in the middle. Others don't know what's going on, and they're just drifting.
So James,
we really do need very simple, clear direction, not just for young people, but for the country. Because when you don't have that, then you confuse everybody, including children.
So James, now that you have the clarity
Yes.
of what the landscape is,
Yes.
and the clarity of the history, and where we took a dive, so now, if you take office, where will you start?
I think, first of all, even before I talk about the programs, I really would like to just bring a sense of order to Kenya, that everybody can feel like we are an orderly society, because it begins there.
That's a tall order.
Yeah, it's a tall order, but you know, it begins from the top. It's like the music must begin from the top. We must sing it, we must drum it and say, Kenyans, let's rally that. It's a rallying call from the president of the nation. That's why we will give that State of the Nation address in Parliament. And that State of the Nation address is not just a ceremony to go and appear in Parliament and tell the nation, oh, we have done this, we have done this. You will be saying things that you have demonstrated. When you say, I want a united country, you have shown it by traveling across the nation and encouraging every community and every county to make strides and go forward.
So order is first on your agenda.
Bring some sense of purpose, if not order, some sense of direction that people can trust us. I want people to trust me, and I want people to trust the government. I want people to say, the government said this and it will happen because it's their government. But having said that, then we must have, you know, the nuts and bolts. We must put food on the table. So we talk about food security, or making sure food is available to everybody. Nobody should have to sleep without eating. As I'm talking to you now, I can assure you, there are very many families, whether in Coast Province or in Turkana, or even in some parts of where I come from, that have not had supper.
James,
I would like that to happen.
Yes, but James, that's exactly what I'm worried about.
Yes.
You're very clear and very passionate about that. You've described, and I wouldn't argue with that a lot of the things that are happening now is results of election from an impoverished people, a manipulated people. Theirs is immediate, from hand to mouth. That's the lot. That's the masses' way of life. How will you be able to do this? Because I don't want a situation where everybody says, I know people are hungry, I will provide food. People don't have water, I will provide it.
Number one.
Why would they trust you? I need them to believe this.
Number one.
Yes.
I would like us to use to put strategic water catchment dams across the nation. Every year we collect enough water and we see it. Even a couple of months back, even just last December, we had rains. Clean water, clean, going to the Indian Ocean, salt into the salt. Use rainwater and what we call water catchment harvesting in Kano Plains, in Mwea irrigation scheme, in Bura irrigation scheme, in Turkana along the plains.
What does
of
it take
the
to put that up? Is it people? Is it instruments?
It takes people, it takes resources, and it takes leadership. In other words, plan it, be strategic about it. Plan it and go and do it. Don't plan it and sit back and talk about it. Okay? Once you do that, you produce enough food. Make sure you also even plan how that food is produced. We don't have to produce maize everywhere in Kenya. There are some areas of Kenya that can produce enough maize for the whole country. But you can also produce beans in other places. You can produce groundnuts. You can produce all this diversity of crops.
It'll take time.
So production is one. You must also make sure that there is storage and supply distribution system. Because we have a case even now where we are producing more than we need, but we can't even store it. And then a few months later, we are importing at a much higher cost, and we deny our farmer that benefit, and we give the benefit to a farmer in South Africa or in Brazil. That's not fair. If you can refuse a farmer in Trans Nzoia to buy their bag of maize at, let's say, 3,000 shillings or 2,000 shillings, because for whatever reason, when the time comes, and yet a few months later, the government can spend billions and buy a bag of maize at 4,000 shillings. What have you just done?
So speak to me about value adding.
You have transferred a benefit for the Kenyan farmer to a farmer in another part of the world.
Is there a word for that? I'm looking for for a word. Okay, we'll find it as we go along. But tell me about value adding.
It is oppression. The word for it is oppressing the masses.
All right.
And if you want to succeed as a country, you don't impoverish the masses. You empower the masses, because the engine of development is the people themselves.
One of the things that he said, James, over and over again, is value adding, invitation, creating an enabling environment so that the invite for investors will come, generate investor hunger and appetite locally, but also invite foreign investment.
You already know these things.
So how does it sit with you? Because it has become just a figure of speech.
Okay, again, for investors to come to Kenya, you do very little, in fact. Give them a stable country politically, give them a secure country, so that nobody wants to come and put an investment in Kenya when we are fighting and every day they are getting reports of people killing each other. Nobody wants to do that. But also create an enabling environment in terms of governance. If an investor is coming to Kenya and he will take 6 months to get a license to bring in investment, and he will go to the country next door and takes 3 days to get the same thing, even though they liked Kenya, why would they wait for 6 months and not go to a place where they can do it in even 3 weeks?
Don't get caught up, James.
Let me put for you another one. If somebody wants to bring money here and you are asking them to pay upfront some kitu kidogo so that they come. So medical environment, somebody wants to come and do a major medical facility for manufacturing generics and then drugs, which will be cheap for our people. And then you say, before you do that, I need 10% of that. And you talk about billions. And person, what the heck? How do I give 10% before I have even made any profit?
Okay, James, I know you. Mwalimu. You can carry on for a while.
So I want
give
to
me a few of the sectors.
I would like to focus on
agriculture.
I want to focus on healthcare. And on healthcare, I want to make sure that everybody can access basic health services by improving the facility, by improving management, by hiring more doctors and nurses, and looking at their terms and conditions of service.
What's ailing that sector now?
Mismanagement and poor funding. Right now we are giving it about 6% of the national budget, as opposed to what we committed as African governments, that the health sector should get about 15%. In my government, I would like to increase that progressively from 6%, that by the end of 5 years, it is 12%. Look at HIV/AIDS. HIV/AIDS is almost 100% funded by donors. If today they pull that donor funding away, we're in trouble. You have about, we have about 600,000 HIV/AIDS, patients who are on ARVs and or HIV/AIDS treatment, and they're depending on global fund, that UNAIDS, USAID. I would like to increase national investment in this and in the entire sector progressively, so that you can balance off that high dependency.
You've actually prompted me on that area, because having been in that Ministry of Health, if I put up that graph now, just to show Kenyans how serious it is, if my director can just put up that graph, and you've talked about the figures involved in terms of the kind of support we depend on externally. And there's the graph. We'll put it up there for the viewers to see. And look at the figure for external support, and then look at the figure out of 51 billion. This is in Kenya shillings. The government of Kenya is doing 2 billion, 2.9 billion Kenya shillings. And I just need to qualify this information is from the Kenya AIDS epidemic update of 2012. And this is from UNAIDS organization, which has given me these figures. And there's a worry that why is this not a priority in the health sector?
If Kenyans would elect me president in the next 1 month, I was in the health sector, I understand it very well. We can have a whole discussion on that here. As I said, it's unfortunate because the public, like the health sector is divided into, there's the private sector. The private sector is doing very well, and we need to give them the environment to do even better. And also make sure that there is a regulatory mechanism that makes sure that the total range of providers are helping to leverage and help to give Kenyans health care.
Are you supporting
but the public
sort of health insurance we're talking about?
No,
for the public?
no, before you even go to health insurance, and I don't want Kenyans to get excited about it, there is something called what we call universal health coverage. You cannot go to insurance before you've built capacity. It is impossible. Even if you say today everybody's insured and you go to hospital in Kapsabet and there are no facilities, what have you just done? They already go there anyway. What you need to do is to invest, to build the facilities, equip them, and I want to promise Kenyans that if you make me president, every county will have a good, very well developed, well equipped referral facility. Right. Referral as in, not everybody needs to come to Kenyatta or Moi referral in Eldoret, simply because now the referral is no longer referral really. It is the hospital, because the other hospitals are not functioning. So everybody is running to the one they think is the best.
Okay, I want you to move on from health.
So health is one. Another one, education. Education is straightforward. I want everybody will go to kindergarten. I want to hire teachers. And in the first 1 year, I would like us to bring immediately 30 to 40,000 teachers. Do you know the shortage we have? 100,000 and more. And that's not, everybody's talking about quality education in public schools. How can you have quality if there are no teachers? We need to bring more teachers. Right now, the number of teachers in Kenya is about 280,000. I would like, by the time I'm leaving, that we have about close to 400,000. That's the level where Kenya should be for the kind of population of children, for the kind of quality that we want in terms of the 21st century. But the budget cannot bring that increase quickly. You have to build it progressively as you expand the economy and you have more resources and you manage the resources better and fight these pilferage and inefficiencies in the system. You can release more resources into the health sector, into the education sector, into the agriculture sector. And when these are flourishing, you're basically producing a stronger human resource to expand again the economy. And the economy grows and continue growing because it's the people who drive the economy. Then, of course, there is the economic growth. And I want to focus on tourism. It's a low-hanging fruit. I want to focus on investment. But I also want to focus as a top priority on youth employment.
Give me a plan for the youth.
Number one, when I get there, I would like, first of all, to declare it a national disaster. Why is that important? When we did that for HIV/AIDS, then you attract resources, both internally and outside. Because you have over 6 million young people who are unemployed. And they become susceptible to all kinds of things. People
and they're always being given promises.
No,
employment with this number of
I have
jobs.
never given them a promise
years.
myself. I've never given them a promise.
Well, here's your chance.
This is my chance. I'm telling them, if I go there, the first thing I will do is to create what we call short-term measures. Short-term measures are opening up internships across the sectors, and private and public, short-term contracts, even engage, regional governments. There are some, like South Sudan, Rwanda, sometimes they need personnel. We can send some of our people there as a short-term measure. Then construction sector, road sector, environment sector, especially environment sector, mining sector, it is just lying idle.
Is this training? Is this absorption? Is this
no? Before you go into training
in those sectors you've mentioned,
training is not a short-term measure. Short-term measure are the things, what you might call emergency relief actions, things you go and do immediately to mop them out of the streets and get them somewhere. It is like I have 3 months here, I have 1 year, I have 6 months here.
Yeah, that's what I was asking.
If you do that,
yes, you're taking them.
We then develop a Marshall program,
right,
which is long-term, which will look at skills and appropriation of those skills. You train them for this sector, you train them for that sector. You have to look at education. You have to look at the middle-level colleges, which we have killed. We need to open up those. So those who are good in sports can go to sports. Those who are good in performing arts, we develop that.
James, so what you're saying, you would not be in a hurry to sort of just put money in their hands. Because one of the arguments has been, enable me by giving me money. I have a plan. I have my own plan. I have my own plan, me and 2 other people or 10 other people. You're giving a variance. You first want to train them before you put money in their hands.
When you want to give them money, you must train. You must train, and you must also open up a transparent system so that every young person knows, if I go to this office and I go and give my papers, I will be told what is available, and I can, see where I can fit. For example, if today we announce and say there is a youth office in every county, we want every young person to go, whatever your qualification, even if you left in primary. There may even be some we might want to send back to school to go for what we call mature classes.
Bridging courses.
Bridging courses.
Yes.
There is a whole range of things. The biggest challenge here is to do what we call firefighting projects. You just do a little bit here, a little bit. Let's have a program which has very clear targets and very clear results or expectations, so everybody knows that this is where we are, this is the number of young people who are in college, this is the number of young people who we have put in, and we expect that by this time so many, and you give a report card every 6 months and say this is what is happening. Even the young people can even track what's going on. They can go to their social media and find what's going on.
Okay, James.
Right now they are operating in the dark. They really don't know where the opportunities are.
James, will you empower women? And how so?
I have already started. Empowering women, in my view, again, goes back to many things. Go back to the rural landscape. Go back to farming. Go back to where they are. The small business women that are in the streets every day.
As an entry point, what would you identify as the biggest thing, the biggest stumbling block for women of this country to be empowered? What is holding them back? Is it deliberate? Is it part of a process where it's a time-based thing? They should just wait, hold back. In time they will get opportunities.
No,
what is it that is holding women back?
I think, Louis, there is no one silver bullet as such, because there is already a lot that is going on. Even as I talk to you, there's a lot of civic education, there's a lot of awareness, and this is why, for example, we have had this time round unprecedented number of women who are vying for position. Unfortunately, there are still very many barriers put, sort of that block them, that hinder them from going forward. So I would like to fight from the legal side in terms of parliament and move towards programs that empower them in a very powerful and very focused manner. But number two, I would like again to target and say, which women are we empowering? Because sometimes when you come and hold a workshop in Hilton and you bring the educated women, and they come and discuss about women empowerment, those women are already empowered. They're empowered like you and me. I'm talking about the mamas who carry clothes to go and sell mitumba. How do we empower that one?
So do you want to inject
business,
money,
what business environment
training,
do we create for them?
Opportunity?
Training.
What do you want to inject there?
I would like opportunities for them. I would like to organize, maybe in some organized cooperative sense, a way that they can access some credit to scale up their little businesses. We would like to support them also at the farming level. We will, women are everywhere. So we must attack it from where they are now, but also go to education.
Okay.
And make sure that we are mopping out the girls from all over the country, especially in communities where the girl child is having a serious challenge, and we still do have that. There are very many parts of Kenya where girls at the age of 12, 15, they have to leave their education and they go and you have already from there cut their leg.
James,
you have disempowered them from there.
James, why is tourism an important sector for you? Apart from just being a figure of speech, that I will improve tourism, what does that mean?
It is important for me because it's the easiest. We have already a beautiful country. People go to Dubai to see architecture or Egypt, but they come to Kenya to see God-given architecture. Kerio Valley, the Rift Valley, the Masai Mara. It's a beautiful country. We just need to organize the sector in terms of security, road network, so we build on what Kibaki has done, connect, like Masai Mara. If today you want to go to the Masai Mara, you have to fly if you want to get there. Otherwise you drive the whole day. Now who wants to drive the whole day? I would like a situation where a family can say in Eldoret, I can drive to go to Lake Turkana. And there is a highway, you drive for a weekend. If you do that, if you provide infrastructure, and if you provide security, the sector will manage itself. They are good managers. Kenya is top of the range in terms of service.
Give me one more sector, James.
Well, the last sector, I talked about the economy. The last sector is not really a sector. It is the issue of security for the country and national unity. For me, that's really a big deal. Security is key because everything else almost depends on it. It's an enabler. So what do we need to do in security? We need to have better coordination among security agencies. We need also to involve local people. If I was today going to Tana River, I would go and solve the problem with the local people there. They know where the problem is, exactly where it is. If you involve them, if you use what we call local intelligence, and you use now national intelligence, and give leadership, there should be no reason why parts of Kenya are fighting and people killing each other, and be fair in terms of distribution of resources from the national and also local level, because sometimes people think the problem is national government. I pray that we focus also on this devolution thing, and for me, these county governments, we must really open our eyes, all of us. Otherwise, if there is a challenge nationally, we are just devolving that same mess down there, and that will not be nice for Kenya. James, I would like to make sure that we can empower and work well to build the institutions of these county governments.
James, we are now clearly told that we are seriously in debt. We're behind in terms of the monies owed. And now with ideas like these, money is involved. Where will you get this money? How will you raise this money for these great innovative ideas?
Let me just ask you, I don't want to ask you a question that I end up answering myself.
Thank you.
But what I wanted to say is, even before you look for more money, okay, there's always reason to need more money, more resources. But we are always getting more resources. There is never enough resources. Even if you go to UK, they are still saying we don't have enough money. What I want us to do is to use better what we have. Before we go and look for, hit our heads and say we don't have resources, use better what we have. One time, PS Kinyo, and I don't know, it was a slip of the tongue, he went on national TV, the PS of Treasury said that we lose 270 billion through pilferage, inefficiency in the system. That is a lot of money. If you streamline the system, if you streamline the budgeting system, and if we can cut down on all these big bureaucracy and get down where the people are, we can get a lot more from what we already have. But number two, we have resources that we haven't developed. We have just discovered oil and natural gas. Put a mechanism of leadership and governance to make sure when we harness and exploit these resources, they don't become a curse, they become a blessing.
Right.
Make sure that every ministry is held to account. In fact, one of the first things I would do when I become president, because I believe I would be president of Kenya, Kenyans, I'm asking you, please trust me, I really mean well for you. If the first thing I would do, I'll take my cabinet out immediately before they run skelter and get confused. I will run them and tell them, here is Vision 2030. Here is the blueprint we promised Kenyan. Let us harmonize now and make sure we are coherent and we are moving in the same direction.
Right.
We are not at cross purposes. Part of the challenge, a teacher used to tell me this, my professor in college, and I want to tell people that sometimes the problem looks this big. But if you eliminate mismanagement, the real problem you're dealing with is really this big.
Small.
So you might say that there's a problem of food in Kenya. But if you just eliminate the inefficiencies in the system, then you find that really the real problem of lack of food is much, much smaller. So for me, I think that our biggest asset is our people and leadership, leadership, leadership. I cannot overemphasize it.
James, there are those who've listened to you, there are those who've heard you as you speak to Kenyans, there are those who've heard you right now, and they're forming their own opinion of what they think of you and if they can trust you with this leadership. But there are those who've been public and have voiced this and said, James is a clever chap. This is a professor who's a really clever chap. Kenya is not ready for his kind of politics. Kenya is not yet issue-based. We're not issue-oriented. How about James takes a step back, supports a guy who is more likely to win, and then become one of his cabinet secretaries?
That is the best question you have asked me in the whole evening. Are you telling me, Louis, that Kenyans are not ready for quality education? Are you saying that Kenyans are not ready for food, that everybody can get food? Are you saying Kenyans are not ready for their children to get jobs? Are you saying Kenyans don't want to go to bed and relax and they don't have to worry that I wake up tomorrow and my house is burned? No. Kenyans were ready a long time ago. It is those guys, it is that language that is misdirecting the nation. That they say, Ole Kiyapi, we don't want the likes of Kiyapi, so that we stick to the same guy, the status quo remains, because you really don't want the things that will challenge. And the real challenge of the nation is to build a country. There is no other challenge. Politics is the business of building the nation. It is not the business of talking. It's not the business of telling people, I'm the best, I'm this, I'm this. It's only the business of saying, if you entrust me with leadership, we shall take you forward from point A to point B. And when another crop of leaders come, they take it to another level. Kibaki has done his bit, and he wants to hand over that baton, not to somebody who will go and undo everything as he has worked so hard to build. He wants somebody who can build from there and take it to another level.
Your last word, James?
My last word to Kenyans is that, again, I'm only in this because I love my country and I love you Kenyans. And I care so much about our children and the future of this nation. And I'm running for president not for a selfish gain for myself. And I hope that you can trust me. If you do trust me and you elect me your president, here my promise is that I will spend every single moment of that presidency serving you and accounting to you. But at the end, the choice is yours, but this nation needs all of us.
Professor James Ole Kiyapi, good luck. I wish you well.
Thank you.
I'll be watching and I'll be speaking to you again.
Thank you.
Well, you have met tonight Professor James Ole Kiyapi. You can now make an informed decision. Will he be your president of choice? Will you trust your dreams, your aspirations, your future with him? That is your choice to make. Our job is to bring them out here for you to meet them and decide. And I'd just like to remind you, we are now lining up for the great debate on who will be the governor of Nairobi City. And KTN is going to do this in partnership with Strathmore University. We will give a definitive date in the next 2 days so that you can now gear up to deciding on that front. So we're giving you opportunity to decide on your president and opportunity to decide on your governor, and indeed across the country we shall be doing the same as we cover Choice 2013. My name is Louis. Have a good night.